I suppose that most of you don't know that I'm a member of Cardinal Nation. I was born in St. Louis. You know, some people, when they ask me, where were you born? I say Central America. And they, oh, Central America, yeah. St. Louis. Am I a baseball fan? Well, yeah. I mean, if you're born in Pittsburgh, you have to be a football fan, Steelers. If you're born in St. Louis, you have to be a baseball fan. And some of my earliest memories were going to Sportsman's Park and seeing baseball games with my parents or friends or whatever. If I don't know the score when I go to bed, if they're playing on the West Coast, the first thing I do, and when I get up in the morning, when the season begins, I check to see if the Cardinals have won. And if they have lost, I am depressed until noon. Now, after the lunch, I kick myself in the pants and get going, but till noon, I'm depressed. Follow every game, always have, always will. That's what happens if you're from St. Louis. But it's getting harder to be a fan. The salaries. A few years ago, the Cardinals had the best player in baseball. His name was Albert Pujols. He played for the Cardinals for 8 years, and he broke all kinds of records. I mean, everybody knew Albert Pujols, in his prime, was the best. And everybody knew that if he remained a Cardinal through his career, that he would have a statue right next to Stan Musial outside of Busch Stadium. He would be loved forever. Children would ask for his autograph. People would stop and talk. They would love him forever. He would be another Stan the man. Everybody knew that could happen. He was that good. And then after 8 years, he got his free agency and he left. He went to another team. It was the money. Now, I know these figures are hard to process. Albert Pujols earned over $100 million. Actually, $111 million for his 8 years of baseball with the Cardinals. And then he left for more money. I had arguments with my brother-in-law over this. And my brother-in-law said, oh, no, this is what you do. You go to another team if it's more money. But he was going to make millions and millions and millions with the Cardinals. And I would say to my brother-in-law, he's got money. And we all knew that if he stayed with the Cardinals, that when his legs went, my dad always said, the legs go first on a baseball player. And when his skill diminished, if he had stayed in St. Louis, he would always be adored. He would always be cheered. The fans wouldn't care if he wasn't as great as he once was. He was ours. He was our team. He was the great Albert Pujols. And I rather doubt that as he's getting into his twilight years as an overpaid athlete in Los Angeles, as his skills diminish, I doubt if they'll ever put a statue up for Albert Pujols in Los Angeles. Now, don't get me wrong. Albert Pujols he's a really good man. He is a strong Christian presence. He has a Christian testimony that is outstanding. And he has a child who has special needs. And he gives a lot of money and his own time to the children of special needs. He is a good man. But I wonder, why would you walk away from all that love? Why would you walk away from all that love? Our text today is from Timothy's letter to Timothy that Paul writes. And in our translation that we read this morning responsively, I think it says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." But I like the old translation better. I think it's sharper, and I think it says it better. It goes like this: "For the love of money is the root of all evil." And by golly, if you just look at all of the ills of the world and you trace them back, it will be a taproot, and there will be somebody who's making money from this ill. Even an atheist who doesn't believe in God could follow that logic and agree with us, agree with Paul, agree with the church. The love of money is the root of all evil. Now, most people are quick to say, but remember now, it's not money that's the evil. It's the love of money that's the evil. It's greed. It's avarice. As we receive the 7 deadly sins, that's the sin of greed. It's called avarice. It's the inordinate, insatiable, never to be able to be reached. I have to have more and more. I have to have more. Well, money's not evil. We know that. I mean, we have to have it. I mean, we all do, right? We couldn't live a day. We couldn't live a day without money. It's what we have to have. And if you would like to live somewhere where money is not used, you would probably have to go to South America into the Amazon rainforest and find one of those tribes that's never been discovered before that lives off the land. Maybe they don't need money, but we do. We need money. But the inordinate, insatiable need for money. I don't know if you read the news this past week, but it was on the television and in the Pittsburgh newspaper, a story about 2 doctors in Pittsburgh. Doctors. They also taught at Pitt Med School. And the police came and put them in handcuffs and took them to jail because they were a part of a drug selling deal. They were doctors. They weren't poor. They spent all of those years to be doctors. They were teaching in a great medical school in the world. They had status and they had money. They had all of this. And yet, they had to have more. Insatiable need. Avarice. Greed. This is part of the 7 deadly. I mean, how could you leave that out? And the Bible, has a lot to say about money. Someone once said that the Bible talks about money more than it talks about prayer. I don't know if that's true. Probably is. And other people have counted in the Bible how many verses in the Bible talk about money. And one person came up with 800 verses. But if you add the full stewardship component to that, it's more like 2,300 verses about money. And Jesus talked about money a lot. He gave 39 parables. 11 of them have to do with money. A fourth of the parables that Jesus told were about money. We have a great need to learn and to grow into people who understand the purpose and value of money. And when we can't do that, the 7 deadly sins come crashing down upon us: avarice and greed. And boy, can they destroy. Can they destroy? It destroyed 2 doctors in Pittsburgh. Money can destroy a marriage. Money can destroy a family. Money can destroy a church. Nations go to war over greed and avarice and the need to have and to take and to keep. Now, avarice comes in many forms, many different disguises, many different ways. You think of the prodigal son. He had a money problem, didn't he? He goes to his father and he asks for the inheritance, which basically means, Dad, drop dead, give me the money now. Broke his father's heart, took all of that money, and went into the far country where he really lived it up. I mean, he had so many friends. As long as he had money, he could do anything, go anywhere. So many friends. And of course, we know that he spent it all. He wasted it all and ended up taking care of pigs, which is not a good place for a little Jewish boy to be, taking care of pigs. He wasted money. That's part of avarice. The inability to keep it at all, to let it be used in the right way, to just let it go through your hands like water, the waste. On the other side of that, on the other pole, would be Judas, the disciple that Jesus had in his company. Judas watched when Mary, the sister of Martha, came and anointed Jesus with this very expensive perfume, anointed his feet. Very, very expensive perfume. And Judas objected. He said, "What is she doing? That money could have been given to the poor," which probably was very disingenuous. I don't think Judas was all that upset with the poor, but he wanted to keep it. He wanted to hoard it. He didn't want a penny to be let go. He wanted to have it all kept because, well, there might be a rainy day. You never know when you're going to need this money. You can't let a penny be spent. You have to hold it. So those are the 2 extremes. The prodigal son who couldn't hold on to it, who wasted it, and Judas who wouldn't let any of it go. Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian writer, has a marvelous story called "How Much Land Does a Man Need?" I remember seeing that on television when I was a kid. There was a dramatic portrayal of it. And even as a young child watching this story, I've never forgotten it. It made such an impact on my life. And then I've read it a number of times since then. But it's a story about a peasant farmer. And more than anything in the world, he wants to have some land. But he doesn't have land. He says, if I only had land, I wouldn't even be afraid of the devil. Well, as the story goes on, he somehow lucks into this wonderful opportunity, a land deal. For just a few rubles, he can have land. And here's the deal. The chief, the little man who's doing the deal, says to the peasant farmer, you start out in the morning, and you can have all the land that you want. You just have to be back. I'm going to put my cap down, and you just have to be back here at the cap when the sun goes down, and you can have all the land you want. And so the farmer, he takes off, and it's a beautiful morning, and he has a shovel, and he marks the land as he walks, and the further he goes, the more beautiful the land. And every time he goes over a ridge, the land is even more beautiful. And he keeps going and he keeps staking out. And the land just keeps getting more beautiful, more richer, richer as he goes. And he marks out all of this land. And then, of course, you know what happens. He looks up at the sun and sees the sun quickly falling down into the sky and realizes how far he is away from his beginning point. And he begins to run. And he runs faster, and he throws away the shovel in his coat, and he runs faster and faster. And then he can see the men at the starting place cheering him on. Come on, you can make it. Let's go. Run faster, faster. And he keeps running and running. And finally he gets to the starting point where the cap is on the ground. And of course he dies. And the chief, who's the devil, as he's running to the cap, is holding his sides in laughter because he knows he's won. And he says, what a fine fellow. He has so much land. And as the story ends, it says that he got exactly all the land he needed, which was 6 feet from head to toe. How much land does a man need? Old Midas, everything he touched turned to gold. He got one wish, you know. What's your one wish, Midas? You can have anything you want. He said, I want to be able to have everything turn to gold. Everything I touch turn to gold. And for a few hours, he's the happiest man in the world until he took hold of his food and realized that he could not nourish himself with his gold and had to beg for the gift to be taken away. The love of money. Avarice. You see, money is not to be loved. We have to have it, but we have always remember this money is in service. It has a purpose. It is to be, as John Wesley would say, make all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Money is an instrument, but when we let it become God, when we let it in our hearts in this insatiable way, when we have to have more and more and more, it expands inside of us. So there's no more space, no more time for anything but money. Avarice. Greed. Money is to be used. But our hearts have only one master. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, with all of your strength. And in that place, our money is an instrument, not that we love, but that we use faithfully, with discernment, with care. Every study that I have ever seen over all of the years on generosity is that the most generous people are the poor. Do you know that? The most generous people are the poor. They share more. They trust more. They give more. No wonder that Jesus says in Luke's gospel, "Blessed are you who are poor." I know in Matthew's gospel, poor in spirit. We may like that one better. But in Luke's gospel, he says, "Blessed are you who are poor." You see, the poor have a special gift, a special blessing. They are generous. And generosity is a gift of the Spirit. And it's a virtue for our overcoming the avarice, which is so strong and which competes so well for our love. I have never met a generous person who was unhappy with their generosity. I have never met someone who ever said, "I gave too much away. I feel terrible about all the sharing, about all the generosity of my life." I've never met that person. I'll keep looking. I'll keep looking for someone who lives a life of generosity who's unhappy. But I don't think I'll ever find her. Amen.